Hello and welcome to Leadership PRN. This is the Dalhousie Faculty of Medicine podcast for leaders both new and established. My name is Dr. Lara Hazelton. I'm a psychiatrist with an interest in education and leadership. Today, I'm very pleased to have with us Dr. Sharon Straus. Hi, Sharon.
Hi, Lara. Great to chat with you today.
I'm really pleased to have you on the podcast today. You and I met a few years ago when you did a grand rounds for the Department of Psychiatry. Can you tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your experience in leadership?
Sure. So thank you again very much. So I'm Sharon Straus, as you said. I'm a geriatrician and a researcher. So I do clinical research, and I've had a variety of different leadership experiences. Right now, I am executive vice president of Unity Health Toronto, which is a network of a few organizations, and I'm also chief medical officer here. And then I also lead a research program called the Knowledge Translation Program here at Unity Health. And I've held kind of different roles over my career, and I think it's one of the great privileges of being an academic is that we get lots of opportunities to kind of explore different types of leadership, everything from research leadership, so running our own research program, but then also opportunities to lead national and international research networks. And then also we get the opportunity to do things at the university level. And I was division director for geriatrics within our Department of Medicine at the University of Toronto. I was program director for a little while, and then was also vice chair of mentorship, equity, and diversity in the Department of Medicine at the University of Toronto. And then have also held roles then within the hospital side of things. So as chief of medicine at St. Michael's, which is part of Unity Health, and then most recently, as I mentioned, became EVP. And I think, as I mentioned, one of the great things is that as a physician, we can sample and have the opportunity to explore different types of leadership. And I don't know of too many other professions where we have such an array of possibilities.
That's a really interesting point. So clinical leadership, academic leadership, do you see them as being more similar or more different? What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think part of it depends on the organizations in which you work, and certainly in Toronto at the University of Toronto, it's a bit of a different model where there is a divide between the university side of things and the hospital side of things, and so, for example, within the hospital environment, we do all the recruitment of physicians in partnership with the university, but it's all really kind of housed within the hospitals, and the practice plans, the financial side of things is housed within the hospitals as opposed to the university. So it is a very different model than in some of the other academic institutions across the country. And so then it does provide different types of leadership opportunity. In addition to being able to grow the department and recruit people, you also have a clinical operational set of responsibilities as well, which again is quite different often from the academic side of things. And at the university, when I was DDD and then and vice chair, it was very much focused on supporting the academic growth of our department members and being able to do what you can using different sets of tools available, and so I do in my experience, certainly in Toronto anyways, it was very different having clinical leadership versus the academic leadership.
Sometimes clinical and academic settings seem to have slightly different values. I don't know if that was your experience.
For sure, and I think that there could be different values. There could be different levers that you have available to implement change and things, and different resources available, and so I think it does lead to different types of leadership experiences, and often I find different capacity building that you might have to do to build your capacity to work in those different areas.
One of the areas that I know is of considerable interest to you is mentorship. You've written a book on that topic that I would recommend to people. Maybe we can link that in the show notes because I think it's an excellent resource. Do you want to just talk a little bit about why mentorship is important?
Thanks for mentioning, and it is something that I've been really, really interested in over my career, and partly it was because I really was exposed to fantastic mentorship when I was doing my graduate training after I'd finished my clinical training. And it made me start thinking about what is it to be a good mentor, and why did it take to that stage in my career to really find a good mentor, and what made, this particular person was Dave Sackett, who had recently moved from McMaster to Oxford, where I was doing my fellowship, and what made him a good mentor, and how could we all develop those skills and that expertise, and so over time then started looking at the literature on what it is that makes a good mentor, and part of it is kind of defining what mentorship is, and one of the things that I found really helpful to think about is that mentorship really is a very holistic approach to the individual, to the mentee in this particular case, where you're wanting to be able to support them in the realization of their dream from a clinical and a personal and an academic perspective, and it really is looking at all those different aspects, and then once kind of clarifying that, then also looked at, well, what's the evidence for mentorship, and as you know, I'm a bit of a geek around the evidence, and I wanted to understand, like, what do we know is the benefit of mentorship, and what does the evidence say? And so we know, for example, that there's an impact on mentees. So we know that mentorship can impact career success. And a lot of times, as you know, in academics, we like to count things like grants and publications and things like that. And we know mentorship can impact that. But we also know that mentorship can support people in their job satisfaction. So people who have mentors are more likely to be satisfied in their job. They're more likely to stay at their institution. And one of the things that I think is important is we want people to be happy in what they're doing. We want to be able to remove barriers so that people can do what they want to be doing. And we want people to stay if they're happy. And so mentorship is a tool for that. And more recently, literature has shown that mentorship can also decrease burnout and support people from a wellness perspective for both the mentees and the mentors. And then there's also the literature then on the impact on the mentors. So a lot of what I've talked about up until now is really, what's the impact on the mentees, but we shouldn't underestimate the impact on the mentors and how important it is in keeping mentors stimulated and interested and enthusiastic, and also helps with regard to burnout amongst mentors. And then the last group that sometimes I don't think we necessarily think about is from an organizational perspective. What's the benefit of mentorship? And again, in addition to kind of having a satisfied and happy and healthy workforce, it also leads to more diverse recruitment, and that's something, again, that more recent literature has shown.
You mentioned that you felt like it was maybe a little later in your career that you found your mentor. What do you think about, like, different stages people are at and how that impacts finding a mentor, who their mentor might be?
Yeah, I think it's a really important point, because sometimes people, are able to find a mentor just by chance, right? You're working clinically somewhere and you see, wow, this is somebody that, I really want to be like this individual. I see kind of how they're interacting with people, and you can explore, potential mentorship. And it's fantastic when that happens, but it doesn't always happen that way. And I think, we as leaders have to think about how best can we support people to find mentors, and how does that need for mentorship and different types of mentorship change over time. And it's we started off talking about how as physicians and academic physicians, we can be exposed to different leadership opportunities. Well, in the same way, our careers can change in so many different ways. And so we can think about then, a mentor that we start off with in our career might be very different from the mentor that we end up with. And because as our job changes, we might have different needs. And, I've often thought about, thinking about my own career, that, I had a mentor starting off, who was fantastic about mentoring from an academic perspective, and really thinking about things as a clinician scientist, and who did have leadership experience, but always said to me, don't do leadership. And so, based on his experiences, and so it always made me think that, to find different mentors as your career goes on who maybe have those different experiences as your career changes. And I think as leaders within organizations, we want to make sure that people are supported to find those individuals, and also recognizing that it might not always be a single individual, that often it's, you might require a team of individuals to provide you with mentorship, and making sure that we help people find, who those individuals might be over their career trajectory.
I know a lot of organizations try to put in place formal structures for doing just that, pairing people up and so forth. Sometimes they're successful, sometimes they're not. Do you have any thoughts about that approach?
Yeah, I think I think it's a good topic to kind of think about, because I think that, as we said, sometimes people struggle finding mentors, and thinking about, who feels comfortable asking for mentorship and reaching out. And so we should be removing barriers so that people can easily access mentors. I worry about, just assigning people mentors without doing it thoughtfully, and thinking about, what are the needs of this individual, and how best can we identify potential mentors for them. And so one of the things that we've tried to do is, first of all, set the expectation that everybody deserves good mentorship, and saying this is what good mentorship should be and should look like. And then identifying kind of, what people are interested in from a career perspective, and then giving them the introductions to potential mentors, and then leaving it to the mentee to meet with those potential mentors to find, a good fit, and that somebody that they would feel comfortable with, and be able to have a mentoring relationship with, and being able to support those connections. And I think that, to me, is the key thing, and allowing people that opportunity to explore it. I also encourage the mentees to not just speak to the mentors, but ask them, the potential mentors, if they could speak to their other mentees to find out if, there's anything that that would be useful for them to know. And I mean, I do it myself when I'm thinking about, taking on a potential mentee. I always encourage them to reach out to my other mentees and ask them, is there anything that Sharon does that would drive me crazy that I would want to know about? And, and I would rather know sooner rather than later. And maybe it's going to, deter me from wanting to explore her as a mentor. So I do think that's another potential thing that we should be thinking about. And ultimately, it's, what are the barriers to people finding mentors, and then trying to work through and remove those barriers.
It's interesting, as you're talking, I'm thinking about one of our online courses in leadership, and somebody who was saying on the discussion boards about how he saw the world as full of mentors. Everywhere he looked, there were people, there were mentors, and then other people were saying, I cannot identify anybody. So is it something about the mentees that makes them able to connect with mentors, or what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I think part of it is thinking about, there are individuals who experience systemic, oppression, and they may not have the same opportunity and the same the same pathways to identify potential mentors, or to reach out to potential mentors. And so I think it's about making sure that we are mindful of that. Also making sure, and again, like I speak as a white woman, I feel I have a tremendous amount of privilege in my role, and I feel like I'm more comfortable reaching out to certain individuals to ask them for mentorship. One of the things that I want to make sure that we do, though, is not expect that everybody's going to feel comfortable doing that. And what are the ways that we can remove those barriers? I also think that there's different aspects of mentorship that we can get from different people, and so one of the things that I also want to make sure is that when we talk about mentorship, really making sure that we're thinking about that holistic approach, that we want somebody who's going to be senior enough in their career that they're going to be able to provide opportunities, and they're not going to feel threatened by the mentee's success. Somebody who is going to have those connections, worldwide, that they're going to be able to provide those to and facilitate connections and collaborations for their mentee. Somebody who is going to have an understanding of the mentee's career path and what their interests are, and being able to support them in that. Somebody who's going to be able to provide them with the ability to pose the questions, because I think, again, the mentor's job is not to tell the mentee what to do, but to kind of pose the questions. And so I always think it's careful, if we say that there's lots of mentors that are out there, is it really mentorship that all these people can provide, or is it coaching around certain tasks? Is it role modeling around certain tasks? And really making sure that for true mentorship, it's the whole package, that we want to make sure that the individual can provide that holistic support to a mentee.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I'm thinking as you're talking, I don't know that I've ever actually had a mentor. I've had some people that I considered role models, and even, I guess, some people who provided some sponsorship. But I think mentorship goes beyond that, probably, doesn't it?
Exactly. And that's the thing. Like, it also makes me sad that you've not had a mentor, right? Like, because I think, like, and it's something that we should all have in our career, and the fact that it doesn't happen routinely across everybody's career, I think, it always makes me think, how can we do better at what we do in academics and in medicine. And I think you're absolutely right. Like, those are all different aspects of being a good mentor. A good mentor should be a role model. They should be a coach. They should be a sponsor. They should be able to help us navigate the bureaucracy of academics. They should be able to do all of those things. And it is different from a role model. Like, I often say, I sometimes see people when I'm on service and think that person handles rounds really well, and I look at them as a role model for that. But I wouldn't say that they're a mentor, because it's it's very specific to that one aspect. Or a coach, like when we go through promotions, we assign people a coach to help the individual go through promotion. And again, it's very kind of task specific, that that person reviews their promotion documents, but it's not somebody who's going to be their mentor and is going to kind of give them career advice or support or anything. But it's very kind of focused on that one aspect. The same thing with sponsorship. Like, sometimes, as we might reach out to somebody and say, here's an opportunity to apply for this leadership role. You should consider applying. A good mentor should be a sponsor, but a sponsor isn't necessarily a mentor. So I agree with you that there are these different aspects, and we often might have people who are role models and coaches and sponsors, but ideally a mentor would be all of those things.
What advice do you have for leaders who want to increase mentorship in their organizations?
So I think a few things. One is, we've already touched on the importance of supporting people and finding mentors, and really establishing a robust program, and establishing the expectation that everybody should have a mentor. And when we recruit people, that put it in the contract and the letter that we will support them in doing that, and really making sure that we follow through. I think it's also then supporting the relationship. So what's what kind of capacity building do we need to do for mentors and mentees, and to make sure that we nurture those relationships. What do we need to also incentivize? So, for example, we did some work to ask people, should mentors be incentivized in any ways? And one of the things that the mentees said is they wanted an ability to recognize good mentors. And so setting up a mentorship award, for example. And I think that's also a way of capacity building. If you can have the mentors who receive awards or who are nominated for a mentorship award, then tell the story of, their mentorship pathway, or, what they find useful. That's another way to not just kind of incentivize and promote mentorship, but also to build capacity in mentorship. And then the last thing I would say is to monitor the mentorship program and process to see, is everybody getting access? Who doesn't get access to mentorship, and what are some of the challenges? And so being able to monitor it on an ongoing basis, and then develop ongoing capacity building to support that. And as an example, at U of T, when I was vice chair, one of the things that we identified was we were very good at supporting people in their kind of early career stages and identifying mentors. And then as people went to mid-career and senior, then it was almost like they kind of gotten forgotten in some ways from a mentorship perspective. And so we put a lot of effort then into making sure that we worked with mid-career and senior people to make sure that they also had access to mentorship. So if we hadn't been monitoring, then you don't pick up on things like that. And so I think, again, it's being able to monitor what you're doing to see if you are making an impact or where the gaps are.
Any final thoughts, Sharon, that you wanted to share with us about mentorship?
I think the last thing I would say is there's no greater privilege than to be a mentor and to be a physician mentor, and being able to see how amazing your mentees do and being able to celebrate their success. I always think it's such a privilege to be able to do that.
Thank you for coming today. It was so great to talk to you about this, and I feel like I could talk for another half hour about this. So, thanks for sharing your wisdom on this topic.
My pleasure. Thank you.
And that's another episode of Leadership PRN. If there's someone you'd like to hear me speak to or a topic you'd like to hear covered, feel free to reach out to me at lara.hazelton@dal.ca or lara.hazelton@nshealth.ca. Until next time, take care.